"Mom, starting with your next paycheck, we're transferring all your money to my account." Those were the first words out of Bryce's mouth that Thursday afternoon. No hello. No how are you. Just that. He said it so casually, like he was talking about moving groceries or scheduling a dentist appointment. As if it were the most natural thing in the world that a son should take over his mother's money. I remember the smell of coffee in the air. The afternoon light was coming through the blinds, cutting thin stripes across my kitchen table. Bryce sat there, tall and confident, wearing that crisp blue shirt that made him look like the man he always wanted to be, the man I worked half my life to help him become. And still, I just stared at him, not saying a word. He looked at me with that calm, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. The kind of smile people wear when they already know you'll say yes. I searched his face for something familiar. Maybe guilt. Maybe hesitation. Anything that would remind me he was still my boy, the one I used to rock to sleep during thunderstorms, the one who used to draw me crooked hearts with "I love you, Mom" written in crayon. But all I saw was control. I heard myself say, "All right, Bryce. If you think it's best." And I hated the sound of my own voice, soft, small, obedient. He smiled wider, stood up, and kissed my forehead, a quick, mechanical gesture, like a man punching his time card before leaving work. "It's for your own good," he said. "You won't have to worry about a thing." Those words, "for your own good." They stayed in the air long after he left, swirling around my empty kitchen like cigarette smoke that wouldn't fade. That night, I cooked dinner, habit, more than anything. Bryce and his wife came by, like they always did on Fridays. For 3 years straight, every Friday evening, I had food waiting. They never asked if I was tired, or if I even wanted company. They just arrived, used their key to walk in, and sat at the table expecting to be fed. But that night, things were different. I'd sold the furniture earlier that week, the couch, the TV, a few other things. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed clarity. I wanted to see something. I wanted to see how my son would react if this house, the one I'd built from sweat and loneliness, didn't look like a free restaurant anymore. I heard their footsteps. The key turning in the lock. The door opening. Then a scream. It was her voice first. Bryce's wife. Sharp and high like glass shattering. Then Bryce's heavy footsteps running into the kitchen. "Mom, what did you do? Where's the furniture? Where's the TV? What the hell is going on here?" I looked up at him calmly. I didn't even flinch. "I sold a few things," I said. "I needed the cash." "Cash?" His face turned red. "You're insane. How could you sell things without asking me first? How are we supposed to watch TV when we come over? How are we supposed to be comfortable here?" "We." That word hit me like a slap. "Not you, Mom. Not your comfort. We." He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his convenience. About losing his favorite place to eat, to sit, to feel important. His wife stepped closer, her voice icy and sharp as she said, "You're being selfish, Ellie. We come here every week to keep you company, to make sure you're okay, and this is how you repay us." Selfish. That word burned. I thought about the nights I'd gone hungry so Bryce could have enough. The decades of double shifts. The way I gave up dating, gave up weekends, gave up sleep all so he could grow up without feeling poor, without feeling fatherless. And now I was selfish. Bryce's expression hardened. "You're not thinking straight. Maybe it was a mistake to trust you with the money. Maybe you need more help than I thought." Help. That's what he called it. Like I was some confused old woman who couldn't tell right from wrong. Something inside me, something small, quiet, buried deep under years of exhaustion, began to stir. I stood up. My knees trembled, but my voice didn't. "Dinner isn't ready," I said. "There is no dinner. If you're hungry, you can eat somewhere else." Silence. Heavy as thunder. His wife let out a dry laugh. Bryce just stared at me like I had turned into a stranger. Maybe I had. Then he said something that sliced through me, clean and cold. "You should be careful, Mom. A woman your age, alone, without anyone who really cares for her, could end up in a bad way. I'm the only one you've got. Remember that before you do anything stupid. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. It was a warning, one I heard loud and clear. They left in a storm of slammed doors and angry footsteps. I stood there in my empty kitchen, in my empty house, surrounded by walls that had seen too much. But I didn't cry. Not this time. What I felt wasn't sadness. It was clarity. Cold, burning clarity. I finally saw Bryce for who he was, not the boy I raised, not the man I believed in, but a stranger who saw me as a resource, not a mother. A meal, a bank account, a convenience. I sat down and looked at the bare living room walls. The empty spaces where furniture once stood. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Because Bryce didn't know something. He didn't know I hadn't sold those things for money. I had sold them to send a message. To see how far he'd go. And he'd gone exactly as far as I expected, straight into anger, entitlement, and threats. That night, sitting alone in that hollow house, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to argue. I was going to wait. I was going to let him believe he had won. And then, when he was most certain, when he thought I was small and weak and predictable, I'd remind him who I truly was. I am Eleanor Johnson, the woman who survived a husband's betrayal, poverty, and 30 years of backbreaking work. The woman who knows how to rebuild from nothing. The woman my son should never have underestimated. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and began to write. A list of things Bryce didn't know. Accounts, debts, secrets, plans. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking like a mother. I was thinking like a survivor. And as the sun rose behind the blinds, I whispered to myself. You wanted control, Bryce. Let's see how you handle losing it. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I just sat in my kitchen, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the pipes, the tiny sounds that make you realize how empty a house can be when there's no love inside it. By sunrise, I had already showered, dressed, and made coffee strong enough to burn through fog. My mind was clear, painfully clear. Something inside me had snapped back into place, the part of me that used to survive, not just endure. I took my purse, locked the door behind me, and went to the bank. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, greeted me with her usual bright smile. Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. How can I help you today? Her cheerfulness almost broke me, but I kept my voice steady. I'd like to see the last 6 months of transactions on my account. She printed the papers without asking questions. It was a long list, too long. I sat in the waiting area, scanning every line. Rent. Groceries. Gas. And then, something that made my heart drop. A withdrawal of $1,200. From a branch across town. A branch I had never set foot in. I stared at the date, 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Bryce had been at my house. I remembered because I was in the shower when he arrived, and I'd yelled for him to come in. My purse had been sitting on the living room couch. I remember him smiling when I came out, the way he'd said, "Take your time, Mom, I'm just checking my phone." My purse had been there. My wallet inside it. My hands trembled as I traced the numbers on the paper. I could feel the air getting thinner. The teller noticed my expression and asked softly, "Is everything okay, hmm?" I shook my head. "Can you tell me how that withdrawal was made?" She checked her computer, then frowned. "It was done in person, with your debit card." "My card?" I whispered. "Are you sure?" "Yes, It was swiped at the counter." I looked down at my purse. My card had never left it, except that one day. And that's when I knew. My own son had stolen from me. I thanked the teller and walked out, clutching the papers like proof of something sacred or something rotten. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I had to stop for a second to steady myself. I felt like the ground under me was shifting. Like everything I'd believed for decades, love, family, trust, had just cracked open to reveal something dark underneath. But I didn't cry. I just breathed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt awake. Over the next few days, I became someone else, quieter, sharper, watchful. Every evening after work, I sat on my bed surrounded by old boxes filled with bank statements, bills, receipts, the paper trail of a life built penny by penny. And the more I looked, the more the truth unfolded, like a puzzle that had always been there, waiting for me to notice. A credit card I didn't remember opening, balance, $3,000. Medical insurance claims I didn't file for visits to clinics I'd never been to. Electric bills under my name for an address I didn't live at. Bryce's address. The pieces started to fit together with horrifying precision. He hadn't just stolen a few dollars. He'd been using my name, my credit, my trust, for years. Every lie he told me suddenly made sense. Every "don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of it." Every "it's too complicated for you to understand." He hadn't been protecting me. He'd been covering his tracks. I sat there surrounded by papers until the sun rose, my hands numb, my heart a stone in my chest. I thought about calling him right then, screaming, demanding answers, but what would that do? He'd lie. He'd make me doubt myself. He'd make me feel old, confused, foolish. No. Not this time. I needed evidence. I needed power. I needed to think like the people who had always thought they were smarter than me. That Friday, Bryce came by again, right on schedule. He and his wife waltzed in like they owned the place, laughing about something on her phone. I had cooked dinner, his favorite, chicken and rice. I set the table neatly, just like old times. They ate. They didn't notice that I wasn't eating. They didn't see the way I was studying them, the way predators study their prey. When Bryce finished his plate, he smiled that salesman's smile and pulled a stack of papers from his briefcase. "Mom," he said, "let's get this done. You've had time to think. Just sign these, and I'll handle everything." I looked at the forms. I'd read enough legal paperwork in my life to recognize a power of attorney when I saw one. Full control. Total access. I met his eyes. "I'm not ready to sign, Bryce." His smile froze. "Mom, it's not complicated. I'm just trying to make your life easier. Easier for you or for me?" That small question made his jaw tighten. His wife crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous, Ellie. He's doing all this for you. You're acting paranoid." I said nothing. Because I realized something even darker. They both knew. She wasn't innocent in this. She was part of it. They wanted everything, my money, my house, my peace. Bryce's voice grew harder. "You're not thinking clearly. Selling your furniture was irrational. You need someone to look after you." My voice came out calm, steady. "You think I need someone to control me. There's a difference." He glared at me. His wife looked away, her lips pressed tight. They left soon after, slamming the door behind them, their footsteps echoing through the hallway like thunder. And that's when I knew the war had begun. Days turned into weeks. No calls. No visits. Just silence. A kind of punishment. The kind meant to break you. But I didn't break. I used the quiet. I learned. I visited the bank again. The credit company. The insurance office. Everywhere I went, I collected proof, statements, signatures, dates. And with each document I added to my folder, I felt stronger. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a witness. A witness to my own betrayal. One morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer. The office was small, downtown, in a building that smelled of old books and dust. The sign on the door said David Chung, attorney at law. He was kind. He listened. I told him everything, the stolen money, the fraudulent accounts, the papers Bryce had brought. He didn't interrupt. He just wrote in his notepad, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Johnson, what you're describing is financial fraud. And if you sign those documents, your son will have full legal control of your assets. He could drain everything, and you'd have no way to fight back." His words were like a slap, but not because I didn't know. I did. I just needed someone else to say it out loud. "What can I do?" I asked quietly. He leaned forward. "First, don't sign anything. Second, report the fraud. Third, change all your passwords, your PIN, everything. Fourth, if you feel unsafe, consider a restraining order. A restraining order. Against my own son. The idea made me sick. I don't want to get him in trouble, I said. He's my son. The lawyer sighed. Mrs. Johnson, your son is already in trouble. The question isn't whether you'll get him into it. The question is whether you'll let him destroy you. I left his office carrying a folder full of forms and a new kind of resolve. I was scared, yes. But beneath the fear was something stronger, purpose. That afternoon, I went to the bank again. I changed everything, PINs, passwords, security questions. I closed the credit card. I filed the reports. The teller helped me with patience and care. No judgment, no pity. When I left, I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken back a piece of myself. That night, Bryce called. Mom, we need to talk, he said. His voice was sharp, almost trembling. Come to my house tomorrow. We have to settle this. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command. I can't tomorrow, I said. Why not? I'm busy. He laughed. Busy? Doing what? Taking care of myself, I said. Something you wouldn't understand. Silence. Heavy and cold. Then his tone shifted. Mom, you're acting really weird. You need to stop this and sign the papers. It's for your own good. There it was again, that phrase. That poison dressed as protection. For my own good, I repeated softly. You mean for yours? He started to argue, but I cut him off. Bryce, I know about the money. The withdrawals. The credit card. The bills in my name. I know everything. Silence again. The kind that hums in your ears. Finally, his voice came back, low and tight. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I said. And you should think very carefully before you say anything else. Mom, you're confused. You're not well. Maybe you need help. There it was, his weapon. Doubt. Gaslight. Manipulation. But it didn't work anymore. I'm not confused, Bryce. I spoke with a lawyer. I have evidence. And I'm done pretending I don't see who you are. A pause. Then, almost a whisper, you talked to a lawyer? Yes. And he explained everything you've done. His voice changed. Colder now. Dangerous. You can't be serious. I'm your son. And I was your mother, I said. Not your bank. He hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time after that. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. From years of silence finally breaking open. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The light outside was still grey, heavy with mist, and the air felt cold against my skin. I made coffee not because I needed it, but because I needed something normal to do with my hands. Everything inside me was vibrating, like my heart had turned into a ticking clock. The phone stayed silent. Bryce didn't call again. I kept expecting him to show up, pounding on the door, demanding answers. But he didn't. Maybe he thought ignoring me would make me give up. Maybe he thought I'd come crawling back, scared and sorry. He didn't know me anymore. After breakfast, I grabbed my purse and left the house. I already knew where I was going, the main bank branch downtown, the one I'd opened my first account in 30 years ago. Back then, I was still young, full of hope, still dreaming of buying a home someday. That dream had long since faded. What was left of it was sitting in that account, $20,000. My life savings. My safety net. My one last bit of independence. When the teller called my name, I told her I wanted to close the account. She blinked in surprise. Are you sure, Mrs. Johnson? You've been with us for a long time. Yes, I said. I just need to make some changes. She handed me a cashier's check, folded neatly inside a white envelope. When I walked out of the bank, the city air felt different, sharper, freer. It hit me then. I had taken back control. Quietly, without anyone's permission. My next stop was another bank, across town. I opened a brand new account under my full name, Eleanor Margaret Johnson, not Ellie, not Mrs. Bryce's mom. No linked cards. No shared access. No online banking. I asked for everything to stay paper only. When the clerk finished, she smiled. You're all set. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Yes, I said. No one, and I mean no one, should ever get information about this account without me present. Not even family. She nodded, a little confused, but she made a note. I walked out of there with my new documents tucked deep inside my purse, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. But safety wasn't enough. I needed to think ahead. Bryce was smart, but predictable. He liked control, not chaos. If he thought he couldn't reach me, he'd panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes. So I decided to give him space, enough rope to hang himself. That evening, I cooked dinner for one. I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine, turned on the radio, and sat at my empty table. The quiet didn't hurt anymore. It felt like peace. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. A text. Bryce, Mom, we need to talk. I'm worried about you. I stared at the words, then smiled faintly. Worried. The same word he'd used the first time he stole from me, like concern could erase betrayal. I didn't answer. 2 hours later, another text came through. Bryce, you're making a mistake. Please don't do something you'll regret. I put the phone face down and turned the music up. He wanted me to react, to feel guilt, fear, doubt. But all I felt was a steady, quiet resolve. Over the next few days, I prepared. Not for confrontation, for freedom. I made copies of every important document. Birth certificate, bank forms, insurance, everything. I stored them in a sealed envelope under a loose floorboard in my bedroom. I withdrew small amounts of cash from my checking account, never more than $100 at a time, and hid them in an old cookie tin in the kitchen. I contacted the utility companies and changed all my billing addresses. Piece by piece, I built a life that existed outside my son's reach. Each task felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost to motherhood, the part of me that had always been there beneath the exhaustion and sacrifice, waiting to breathe again. 3 days later, Bryce showed up at my door. I saw his car from the window, dark gray, expensive, shining like a warning. For a moment, I thought about pretending I wasn't home. But then I realized I didn't have to hide. Not anymore. When I opened the door, his face looked different, pale, tired, angry underneath the fake smile. Mom, he said, stepping inside without asking. Why are you doing this? Why are you making things so difficult? I'm not, I said simply. I'm protecting myself. He laughed, short and sharp. From what? Me. You think I'm some kind of threat? I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked. At the man standing in my hallway, surrounded by empty walls and missing furniture. He looked like a stranger wearing my son's face. Mom, he said again, softer this time, almost pleading. I'm just trying to help. You've always trusted me. I trusted you because I loved you, I said quietly. And you used that trust to take from me. His jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. Maybe. But you can't gaslight me anymore, Bryce. I know what you did. For a second, his mask slipped. I saw the flash of fear in his eyes before he covered it with anger. You don't have proof, he said. I have enough, I replied. And if you ever try to touch my accounts again, you'll see how much. His lips pressed into a thin line. You'd go to the police. Against your own son? If I have to. He looked around the room, shaking his head. You've lost it. You're really losing it. And then, in that same cold voice he'd used before, he said, you should remember, Mom, you don't have anyone else. Just me. I stepped closer. I used to think that, I said. But I was wrong. I have myself. And that's more than I've had in a long time. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. He just stared at me, eyes flickering between disbelief and rage, then turned around and left. The door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. I stood there, heart pounding, my hands trembling. But I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. Because he was scared. And fear meant I was winning. That night, I took out the envelope with the cashier's check and placed it on the table. The moonlight fell across the paper like silver. I whispered to myself, "You can't take what you don't know exists." Then I wrote a letter. Not to Bryce, but to myself. It said, "You've spent your life giving. Now it's time to live for you. Don't go back. Not ever." I folded it and slipped it into my purse next to my new bank documents. The next morning, I went for a walk through the park. It had been years since I'd gone there without rushing somewhere. The air smelled like wet grass and sunlight. Children laughed in the distance. Couples strolled hand in hand. And for a moment, I allowed myself to just be a woman, not a mother, not a victim. When I got home, there was an envelope wedged under my front door. No return address. Just my name in Bryce's handwriting. Inside was a single note. "You don't know what you're doing. You're making a fool of yourself. If you keep this up, I'll have no choice but to step in. No choice but to step in." The words made my stomach turn. Not because of what they said, but because of what they meant. He wasn't warning me anymore. He was threatening me. I burned the note in the kitchen sink and watched the ash swirl away. Then I did something that scared me even more. I called my lawyer. "Mr. Chung," I said, my voice trembling, "I think my son might try to hurt me. Not physically, but legally." He's angry. He's desperate. He didn't hesitate. "Mrs. Johnson, come to my office tomorrow. We'll take care of this." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt heavier, darker. But I didn't regret anything. I was scared, yes, but I wasn't powerless anymore. Before going to bed, I looked at the spot where my couch used to be, the empty space where I'd once imagined my family gathered, laughing, safe. Now it was just bare floor and silence. And I realized something. Maybe this was freedom. Not peace, not comfort, but emptiness. A clean slate. Because sometimes, to rebuild your life, you have to burn down the version they trapped you in. I didn't tell anyone where I was going that morning. I dressed carefully, grey slacks, my best cardigan, hair tied neatly. It wasn't vanity. It was armor. I needed to look like a woman who couldn't be dismissed, not a tired old mother who'd lost her grip on reality. The bus ride downtown felt endless. Every stop seemed to drag me closer to something irreversible. My hands trembled in my lap, the envelope of papers pressed tightly against my chest. Inside it was my entire story, the withdrawals, the credit card, the forged accounts, and the letter Bryce had left me. All the pieces of the puzzle that proved my son had turned into a stranger. When I reached Mr. Chung's office, I hesitated before pushing open the door. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. He's expecting you." I walked in, and he greeted me with that calm, kind smile of his. "Mrs. Johnson," he said. "You did the right thing calling me." "I don't know if anything I do feels right anymore," I admitted, sitting down. "But I know I can't stay quiet." He nodded and reached for his pen. "Let's start with what happened since we last spoke." I told him about Bryce showing up, about his threats, about the letter he'd left at my door. The words came out flat, like I was describing someone else's life, not mine. Mr. Chung listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "What you're describing isn't just financial abuse anymore. It's intimidation. You have every right to protect yourself." He slid a form across the desk. "This is a request for a restraining order. It doesn't mean he'll be arrested, it simply creates legal distance. It gives you control." My throat tightened. "A restraining order against my son," I whispered. "It feels wrong." "Wrong," he said softly, "is what he's been doing to you. What you're doing now is survival." I stared at the paper for a long time before picking up the pen. My hand shook slightly, but I signed. And when I did, something inside me cracked, not from pain, but from release. It felt like I was finally cutting a chain that had been wrapped around my heart for years. Mr. Chung looked at me with quiet respect. "You're stronger than you think, Mrs. Johnson. Most people never take this step." I left his office lighter, yet hollow. Like I'd just buried something sacred. Back home, the silence of the house felt different, sharper, charged. I brewed tea, sat by the window, and watched the world go by. People walking dogs. Kids running with backpacks. Life happening ordinary, peaceful. And here I was, in the middle of a quiet war no one could see. That evening, the phone rang. I didn't need to look at the caller ID. I knew it was him. I let it ring once, twice, and then answered. Mom, Bryce's voice came through, controlled but tight. You went to a lawyer, didn't you? Yes, I said evenly. A pause. Then, what the hell are you thinking? I'm thinking about protecting myself. From your son. His voice cracked with mock disbelief. You've lost it. Do you realize what this looks like? You're making me look like some kind of criminal. You've made yourself look that way, Bryce. Stop talking like that, he snapped. You're confused. You've always been too emotional, Mom. You're letting people fill your head with lies. People? I asked quietly. You mean facts? He went silent, then his tone softened, almost pleading. Look, we both said things we didn't mean. Let's fix this before it gets worse. I can come over tonight, and we'll. No. The word came out of me like steel. No, he repeated, stunned. You're not welcome here anymore, Bryce. Not until you tell me the truth. Not until you admit what you did. He laughed, but it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief turning into rage. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your son. You stopped being my son the day you decided I was your bank. Then I hung up. That night, I sat on my couch, or rather, the space where my couch used to be, staring at the wall until the clock struck midnight. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I was empty. Completely empty. And in that emptiness, I found peace. Because when you lose everything, you stop being afraid of losing more. Still, a part of me wondered how far he would go. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next day, I went to the grocery store. Just a few essentials, milk, bread, eggs. When I swiped my card, it declined. I frowned and tried again. Same result. The cashier gave me a sympathetic look. It's saying insufficient funds. That was impossible. I had over $600 in that account just yesterday. I thanked her, left the items behind, and went straight to the bank. When the teller pulled up my account, her smile faded. Mrs. Johnson, there's been a withdrawal. How much? I asked, my stomach sinking. She hesitated. Everything. My heart stopped. Who made it? She checked her screen, then said quietly, the transaction was processed online. The request came from a device registered under your account login. I felt dizzy. I hadn't used online banking in weeks. I'd changed my passwords, my security questions, everything. Then I remembered. There was one device I hadn't disconnected. The old laptop Bryce had helped me set up years ago. He must have still had access. I could barely breathe. Can you freeze the account? I asked. She nodded, clicking fast, her expression tense. Done. But the funds are gone, Mrs. Johnson. I'm sorry. I walked out of the bank, my legs shaking, my mind racing. It wasn't about the money, not anymore. It was about power. Control. Punishment. Bryce was trying to break me. To prove he still could. When I got home, I found the mailbox open. Inside was another envelope. No return address. Just one word written in large, angry letters, enough. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I tore it in half, dropped it in the trash, and locked every door and window. That night, I barely slept. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the distant bark of a dog made my pulse spike. But beneath the fear, there was something else rising inside me. Something cold. Steady. Unstoppable. I wasn't the woman he thought I was anymore. The next morning, I called Mr. Chung again. When he answered, I told him everything. The drained account, the note, the threats. He didn't sound surprised. Mrs. Johnson, I think it's time we go to the police. The word police made my stomach twist. Report my son. Turn him in. But then I remembered the look on his face that day in the kitchen. The way he had told me I was alone. That I had no one but him. That wasn't love. That was ownership. So I said, okay. Let's do it. The police station smelled like disinfectant and coffee. The officer who took my statement, a woman named Torres, was patient, gentle. She didn't treat me like an old fool. She treated me like a victim of a crime. When I finished explaining everything, she looked at me seriously. Mrs. Johnson, this isn't uncommon. Financial abuse within families is real. You've done the right thing by reporting it. I asked her if they could get my money back. She said maybe. But what I really wanted wasn't money, it was my life back. Before I left, she said, if he contacts you again, don't respond. Call us immediately. That night, the house felt different. Still empty, but cleaner somehow, like something toxic had been scrubbed out of the air. I made tea, sat in my chair, and listened to the ticking clock. Part of me still hoped Bryce would show up at my door, crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. That part of me still loved him, the little boy with scraped knees and bright eyes. But that boy was gone. Replaced by a man who saw his mother as a weakness to exploit. And yet, even knowing all that, a small ache remained. Because motherhood isn't something you can switch off. Even when your heart is broken, it still beats for your child. I thought about calling him. Then I thought about the words he'd said, you should be careful. You have no one but me. And I realized I did have someone. I had myself. And for now, that was enough. The phone rang again around 10 p.m. unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then pressed play. Mom, Bryce's voice said, low and unsteady. I can't believe you did this. You really went to the cops. You think they'll protect you from me? You think they care? You've made a big mistake. There was a pause, a long breath, then his voice dropped to a whisper. You're not safe, Mom. Not without me. The message ended with a click. I stood there, staring at the phone, my chest rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. I wasn't sure if it was a threat or a plea. Maybe both. But one thing was clear, the next move would be mine. The next few days passed in slow motion. Every morning I woke up expecting to hear knocking on the door. Every evening I checked that the locks were still in place, that the curtains were drawn, that no car was parked too long across the street. Fear became a rhythm, a quiet, constant drum in my chest. But it didn't break me. It sharpened me. I'd been scared before. When my husband died, when the bills came, when Bryce first started slipping away. But this was different. This fear wasn't weakness, it was awareness. It told me where the danger was, and how close it had come. And it told me I had to end it. Not by hiding. By acting. Mr. Chung called me 2 mornings later. We've submitted the restraining order, he said. But it could take a few days before it's processed. In the meantime, stay alert. Keep any communication from him, texts, emails, voicemails, all of it can be evidence. I thanked him. But I knew waiting wasn't enough. Bryce was unpredictable when cornered. And I could feel, deep in my gut, that he wasn't finished. So I decided to take control of the narrative for once in my life. That afternoon, I drove to a small cafe downtown. The kind of place where no one knows anyone's name. I ordered black coffee and sat by the window. Then I took out my phone and texted him. Bryce, let's talk. One last time. No lawyers. No police. Just you and me. His reply came within minutes. Where? My house. Tomorrow. Noon. After that, we're done. There was a pause. Then he wrote. Fine. That single word made my hands tremble. But not from fear. From adrenaline. Tomorrow would be the last time I'd ever see my son. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every version of how it could go, him shouting, crying, apologizing, threatening. None of it ended peacefully. Around midnight, I walked to my kitchen and opened the drawer by the fridge. Inside was an old tape recorder, one my husband used when he worked on music years ago. It still worked. I replaced the batteries, tested it, and hid it under a folded napkin on the kitchen counter. If Bryce came to threaten me again, I'd have proof. No more, he said, she said. This time, The truth would have a voice. The next day was bright and strangely calm. I cleaned the house, not because it was dirty, but because I needed to do something with my hands. I brewed coffee, even baked muffins. It almost felt normal. Until I saw his car pull up. He came alone. No wife, no fake smiles. Just him, dark jacket, sunglasses, tension written all over his body. When I opened the door, he didn't wait for an invitation. He walked straight in, eyes scanning the room like he was measuring what was left. "Mom," he said. "You've made a mess of things." "Sit," I said quietly. He stayed standing. "You called the cops. You embarrassed me. You froze my accounts. Do you even understand what you've done?" "Yes," I said. "I understand exactly." He slammed his hand against the wall. "I was trying to help you. By stealing from me. By saving you from yourself," he shouted. "You don't know what it's like, trying to take care of someone who refuses to listen. You needed me. You still do." "I needed a son," I said softly. "Not a thief." The words landed like a slap. For a moment, his face crumpled, just for a second, then hardened again. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "Talking to lawyers, pretending to be some kind of victim. You've always been dramatic." "I'm not pretending," I said. "I have proof." That caught him. His eyes flickered, confusion, then realization. "You recorded me?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He stepped closer, voice low and venomous. "You don't know what you're doing, Mom. If you go through with this, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll take everything. Your house. Your savings. You think the police can stop me?" I didn't flinch. I looked straight at him, the boy I'd raised, now a man I didn't recognize. "You already took everything that mattered, Bryce." He stared at me for a long time. His jaw clenched. And then, just like that, he turned around and stormed out. The door slammed behind him so hard it rattled the glass. I waited. I didn't move until I heard his car start and fade into the distance. Then I pressed stop on the recorder. His voice, angry, threatening, undeniable, filled the room as I replayed it. It was the sound of truth. Ugly, but real. That evening, I went straight to Mr. Chung's office. I placed the recorder on his desk, still shaking slightly. He pressed play. Listened. When the recording ended, he looked at me with something between admiration and sorrow. "This," he said quietly, "changes everything." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Johnson, we can file a criminal case. Extortion, harassment, identity theft, it's all here. But I need to ask, are you ready for that?" I hesitated. "Ready? No. But I was done being afraid." "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." He nodded. "Then we'll move forward. You did the right thing. You've been brave, and you've done everything by the book." As I left, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, clarity. The world still hurt, but it made sense again. Actions had consequences. Even for family. That night, I got home late. The street was quiet, bathed in soft orange light. As I reached my porch, I noticed something odd. My front door was slightly open. My chest tightened. I froze. The house was dark. Silent. I stepped inside carefully, my keys gripped between my fingers like a weapon. The living room was untouched. So was the kitchen. Then I saw it, my bedroom door, cracked open. I pushed it wider. Drawers open. Clothes tossed. Papers scattered. And my floorboard, the one where I'd hidden my documents, pried loose. He'd been here. I called the police immediately. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. They checked the house, took photos, dusted for prints. Officer Torres, the same one from before, looked at me with deep sympathy. "It looks like he was looking for something specific," she said. "My documents," I whispered. "My proof. Do you think he took anything?" I checked the floorboard again. The envelope was still there, but empty. My papers were gone. Officer Torres sighed. "We'll file this as a break-in and connect it to your existing report. This strengthens your case." "Strengthens my case." I wanted to laugh. I didn't want a case, I wanted peace. But peace doesn't come without a fight. The next morning, Bryce texted me again. You shouldn't have done this. No threats. No excuses. Just that. Cold and final. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Then I called Officer Torres and sent her a screenshot. She told me it would be added to the file. Later that day, Mr. Chung called. They've issued a temporary restraining order, he said. It's official now. If he comes near you, it's a criminal offense. I thanked him, hung up, and sat down in the same chair I'd sat in 1,000 times before. But it felt different now. Because this wasn't my prison anymore. It was my fortress. That evening, I took a long bath, the first one in weeks. I lit a candle, closed my eyes, and let the warm water wash over me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone who had crawled through the fire and come out the other side. When I got out, I looked at myself in the mirror. There were lines, yes. Age. Tiredness. But also something new, a sharpness in my eyes. Strength. I whispered to my reflection, you did it. You finally did it. But then, as I turned off the light, I noticed something on the windowsill, a folded piece of paper. No envelope this time. Just handwriting I knew too well. My heart stopped. You win, Mom. For now. I didn't call the police. I didn't call Mr. Chung. I just stood there in the dark, the note shaking in my hand. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. But I also knew something else. He was scared now. And for the first time, he should be. The morning of the hearing, the sky looked bruised, grey clouds pressing low over the courthouse, heavy with rain. I sat in the car for a long time before getting out. The world outside felt colder than usual, sharper. Maybe it wasn't the weather. Maybe it was the weight of what I was about to do. Inside the courthouse, everything smelled of coffee, paper, and nerves. I clutched my purse close. Inside it, the letter, the photos of the trashed bedroom, the restraining order. My proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that even mothers can be victims. Mr. Chung met me in the hallway. He looked steady, calm, the kind of calm I'd been borrowing from him for weeks. Ready? He asked. No, I said honestly. But I'm here. He nodded. That's enough. When we stepped into the courtroom, time slowed. The benches were mostly empty, just a few quiet strangers waiting for their own battles. And there 2 rows ahead sat Bryce. He looked thinner. Paler. His hair shorter. His eyes dark and tired. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who'd bring me flowers from the yard, who'd laugh too loud, who'd hug me without reason. But that boy was gone. What sat before me now was a man who'd burned the bridge back to me. He didn't look at me at first. But when he finally did, just for a second, something flickered in his expression, fear, guilt, maybe even shame. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask I knew too well. The judge entered, a woman with stern eyes and silver hair pulled tight. The sound of her gavel cracked through the silence. Case number 347B, Johnson vs. Johnson, she said, looking between us. Financial and emotional abuse, property theft, and violation of protective order. Hearing it said out loud, Johnson vs. Johnson, nearly broke me. Mother against son. 2 people who once shared everything, now standing on opposite sides of a courtroom. How did it come to this? Mr. Chung stood first, his voice steady but low. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, is not here out of vengeance. She is here out of necessity. The defendant, her son, used deceit to drain her accounts, intimidated her through repeated threats, and broke into her home. We have audio evidence of his verbal threats and photographs from the break-in. He pressed play on the recording. Bryce's voice filled the courtroom, echoing off the cold walls. You don't know what you're doing, Mom. If you go through with this, I'll make sure you regret it. Hearing it out loud, in front of strangers, was like being stabbed and freed at the same time. It hurt. But it was also truth. And truth, I realized, has its own kind of power. When the recording ended, the judge turned to Bryce. Do you wish to respond? He stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, my mother is confused. She's been under stress. I was trying to help manage her finances. I admit I made mistakes, but never with malicious intent. She's blowing this out of proportion. The judge's gaze didn't soften. Did you access her accounts without permission? He hesitated. Not exactly. She. Answer the question, Mr. Johnson. He looked down. Yes. The word fell into the room like a stone sinking in water. No excuses. No way back. For the next hour, the hearing went on evidence, testimony, paperwork. I answered questions as best I could, my voice trembling but clear. Every time I said something, I could feel Bryce's stare burning into me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Finally, the judge spoke. Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, this is a tragedy. But the law is clear. Mr. Johnson, you exploited your mother's trust for personal gain. You violated boundaries, engaged in harassment, and attempted to manipulate her emotionally and financially. Bryce's jaw tightened. The judge continued, you are hereby ordered to cease all contact with your mother. Restitution will be arranged under the supervision of the court. Any further contact, direct or indirect, will result in immediate arrest. Silence. The gavel fell. And just like that, it was over. When I stepped out of the courtroom, the rain had started. Soft at first, then heavier, soaking through my coat. I didn't run for cover. I stood there on the courthouse steps, letting the rain wash over me. For years, I'd carried his mistakes like they were mine. But not anymore. I'd given birth to him. Raised him. Loved him. But I couldn't save him from himself. And maybe that was the hardest truth of all. Mr. Chung joined me under the awning. You did it, he said quietly. I don't feel like I did, I replied. I feel like I just survived. He smiled gently. Sometimes, that's the same thing. That night, the house was still. The kind of stillness that felt new, not hollow, not heavy. Just quiet. I brewed tea and sat by the window. The rain hadn't stopped, it tapped softly against the glass like an old song. I thought of Bryce, where he was now, what he was thinking. Maybe he hated me. Maybe he didn't understand. But I hoped, one day, he would. Because love doesn't vanish, even when it hurts. It just changes shape. I reached into my purse and found the letter I'd written weeks ago, the one I'd kept for myself. I unfolded it and read it again. You've spent your life giving. Now it's time to live for you. Don't go back. Not ever. This time, I smiled. A few days later, I sold the house. I packed the few things that truly mattered, photos, books, my husband's old tape recorder, and left everything else behind. No furniture, no ghosts, no memories that smelled like regret. I moved to a small apartment by the coast. The kind where the windows face the ocean and the nights smell like salt and wind. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Completely, entirely mine. The first morning there, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains. I made coffee, walked to the balcony, and watched the sea stretch endlessly before me. Freedom didn't look like fireworks or applause. It looked like still water and an open sky. Sometimes, I still think about Bryce. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, not the woman he could manipulate, but the mother who finally said enough. Maybe one day, he'll understand that love doesn't mean surrender. Maybe one day, he'll forgive me for saving myself. But until then, I live. I breathe. I choose peace, even when it feels lonely. Because I've learned something powerful. Sometimes the most courageous thing a mother can do is stop rescuing her son and start rescuing herself. That night, as the sun melted into the horizon, I whispered a small prayer, not for him, not for me, but for the space between us. A space that once was pain, now filled with quiet. I closed my eyes and listened to the ocean. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid.